or Mrs. Cherie. I am so excited that I'm going to be reading to you today. We are going to be exploring the middle colonies, life in the middle colonies, and the formation of the middle colonies. So as you listen to me read, I'd like for you to remember a few things. Also, the brain loves the colors red, yellow, blue, green. So you can take your notes in red, yellow, blue, green in the history section of your notebook. Something else to remember is that the brain also loves mnemonic devices or pictures. So as you listen to me read, you can sketch a few pictures. Now don't get too detailed on the pictures, just a quick sketch. Or you can write down names or any interesting facts or details that you think are going to be helpful to help you understand the topic of the formation of or life in the middle colonies. All right, let's get started. Grab your notebook, your colors, red, yellow, blue, and green, because those are the colors the brain likes, and let's get ready. So before we read the chapter, I want to dig into a couple of words that I want you to know. So repeat after me. Say refuge, proprietor, trial by jury, and justice. So those are the words that you're going to have to know. Those are our vocabulary words. So by the time we are done reading, not only do I want you to understand why people from different places and different backgrounds came to the middle colonies, I want you to also hone in on those words and using context clues to determine meaning. Remember, to use context clues means use the sentences or the words around the word to determine new meaning. So close your eyes. You are there. Go ahead, close your eyes. The year is 1660. King Charles II is pleased with his American colonies. In the north, New England produces large amounts of lumber. In the south, Virginia's tobacco plantations are bringing him great wealth. The king points to a map. The problem lies here, right in the middle, he tells you. That Dutch colony is in the way. Open your eyes. What did you see? Did you see a picture of King Charles, of what they used to look like with their long, dramatic wigs? So today we're going to explore the middle colonies, the breadbasket colonies. While the Puritans were settling New England, other groups were setting up colonies directly to the north. This region included what are today the states of New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. These colonies became known as the middle colonies. The region got its name because of its location between the New England colonies and the southern colonies. Geography and climate. When Europeans arrived in the middle colonies, they saw flat plains and rolling hills. There were also grassy meadows and thick forests. Settlers found that when this land was cleared, it was much better for farming than the land in New England. Settlers also learned that the climate was good for growing crops. The summers were long, and the amount of rain each year was good for crops such as wheat, corn, and rye. The middle colonies grew many crops that were used to make bread. They came to be known the breadbasket colony. So if we stop and think for a minute, the colonies that make up the New England colonies that you definitely probably want to put into your notes are where we live, which is New Jersey, New York, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. So all of these, what we now call states, are what made up what they refer to as the breadbasket colony. Now, why were they called the breadbasket colony? Because the soil was fertile and all of the things that you could use to make bread were grown in these particular colonies. Let's continue reading. In addition to rich land, the region had several large harbors along the Atlantic Ocean. Settlers found that these harbors were connected to many of the region's rivers, such as Hudson and Delaware rivers. These rivers stretched far inland. Settlers knew that these deep waterways would let large ships travel inland, making trade with other colonies easier. All of these special features attracted many different settlers to the region. Now, what attracted many different settlers to the region? Think about it. Take a minute to pause the video and jot down the answer to that question in your note. New Netherland grows. The Dutch still controlled New Netherland, which included the Hudson Valley. However, few Dutch people came to the colony. Their country, New Netherlands, was prosperous. It gave many citizens many freedoms, and people saw no reason to leave. By 1640, only about 2,000 people lived in the colony. These settlers had problems with both Native Americans and nearby English colonists. A new leader. The Dutch West India Company controlled New Netherland. It decided that a new leader was needed to raise the colony's profits and bring order. Now let's think about what a profit is. A profit means money or something that someone makes. So they thought, we need a new leader because we want to make more of a what? Profit, right? In 1647, the company sent PeterStuyvesant to govern the colony. In the 1650s, Stuyvesant expanded New Netherlands into what is now New Jersey. Then he pushed south into what is now Delaware, taking over the small colony of New Sweden in 1655. New Netherland now controlled more land, but it needed more colonists. It didn't have enough people to be successful. Because if we remember what we read in the paragraph before, many people didn't really see a reason for coming to the new colonies that were being formed. So, new colonists. To increase New Netherlands' population, the Dutch West India Company let people from Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Spain, and Brazil settle the colony. The new settlers included one of the first groups of Jewish people to move to North America. Africans also lived in New Netherland. Most had been captured and brought to the colony as enslaved workers beginning in 1626. Yet, not all Africans in New Netherland were enslaved. Some had been able to buy their freedom. However, they were not completely free. Each year, they had to pay their employers in money or goods to remain free. In 1660, Stuyvesant gave land on Manhattan to about 40 formerly free enslaved people. This land became New Netherlands and a community of free Africans. So in this paragraph, we are now discovering how more colonists came to what we now know as, the states where we live, or what they would call the middle colonies. So we know it was a mixture of people from Europe, some from Brazil, and we also know that a lot of the Africans were captured from their homeland of Africa and brought into the colonies as enslaved workers. Some of them somehow, some way, were able to buy their freedom, but in some ways, could you think if you had to pay someone to remain free, what do you think? Is that a form of freedom? So that is what we discover in these paragraphs about how the formation of the middle colonies came about and how they grew their population. Let's continue. The English take over. King Charles II wanted England to control the African coast of North America. He wanted more settlements, more lands, rich in natural resources, and control of fur trade. One thing prevented the king from meeting his goal: the colony of New Netherland, conflicts over land. Both the English and the Dutch claimed lands of the Connecticut Valley on Long Island. King Charles II gave his brother James, the Duke of York, the land between Maine and the Delaware River, including New Netherland. In 1664, the Duke of York sent 4 warships to take New Netherland. When the ships arrived off the coast of the colony, the English told Stuyvesant to give up. They said that if he did not, they would attack. Stuyvesant wanted to fight the English and keep New Netherland. He tried to get the colonists to fight, but they would not. They knew that they were outnumbered. New Netherland had fewer than 150 soldiers. Stuyvesant surrendered, and the English took control of New Netherland without firing a shot. So in the picture, you see PeterStuyvesant in New Netherland after the English took over the colony, but he later returned and lived in New York. New York and New Jersey. James, The Duke of York split the Dutch colony into two parts. He named them New York and New Jersey. James kept New York for himself, and the city of New Amsterdam became New York City. James gave New Jersey and to two of his friends, John Berkeley and George Carteret. The English treated the Dutch settlers fairly. They promised to protect their rights, religious freedom, and property. They also let the colonists elect some of their own leaders. Most Dutch settlers chose to stay. At first, nearly all of the colonists lived in New York. To attract more settlers to New Jersey, Berkeley and Carteret offered to sell land at low prices. Many of the early settlers arriving in New Jersey were members of the Society of Friends, a religious group known as the Quakers. The Quakers. The Quakers believed that all people were equal. They refused to fight in wars or to swear loyalty to any king or country. So the Quakers were quite different than what we see from some of the other colonists or settlers who came to what we now know as America. We know a lot of wars were fought. We know enslaved Africans were stolen from their country and brought here. But here are a different group of people, the Quakers, who had somewhat of a different mindset and belief. So let's dig into who the Quakers were, what they were about, and which colonies they actually formed. Let's continue. So Quakers believed that all people were equal. They refused to fight in wars or swear loyalty to any king or country. People with different beliefs were often cruel to the Quakers. Thousands of Quakers were forced to leave England. The Quakers hoped to find a refuge or a safe place to live and worship. In 1674, a group of Quakers bought Berkeley's share of New Jersey and founded Salem, New Jersey, the first Quaker settlement in North America. How did many Quakers settle in New Jersey? So that's what we want to think about, or why rather. Why did many Quakers settle in New Jersey? We know that thousands of them were forced to leave England. So they came and they were able to find refuge in a safe place here to live and worship and believe as they felt. And a fun fact, I remember taking a field trip not too far from my house when I was around about your age, right in Burlington, to the Quaker Meeting House, and it's still there. So that's a quick fun fact. Now we're going to read now about Pennsylvania and Delaware. And you're going to probably hear some familiar names, especially if you recall, if you have visited this part of Pennsylvania before. And if you think about the name Pennsylvania. In 1681, King Charles II gave a charter to William Penn, an English Quaker. The charter made Penn the proprietor or owner of what is now Pennsylvania. A plan for a new government. Penn was given the land because the king owed the money to Penn's father. The new colony was named Pennsylvania, which means Penn's Woods. Penn wanted all the people living in Pennsylvania, Quakers and non-Quakers, to live together peacefully. I don't know if you know this, but the city of Philadelphia, which is in Pennsylvania, is called the City of Brotherly Love. Hence, William Penn, who wanted everybody, no matter what, Quaker or non-Quaker, to be able to live peacefully. In 1682, Penn wrote the frame of government for Pennsylvania. This plan of government set up the legislature called the General Assembly. It also gave citizens freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to a fair trial by jury. In a trial by jury, a group of citizens decides if a person is guilty or innocent of committing a crime. Penn later wrote the Pennsylvania Charter of Privileges, which allowed white male colonists to elect representatives to the assembly. The Duke of York gave Penn control of the land that now makes up Delaware in 1682. Penn gave the colony its own assembly in 1704. Now, does any of that sound familiar? Trial by jury, General Assembly, same things we kind of have in our country right now, right? Relations with Native Americans. Penn also wanted Native Americans to be treated with justice or fairness. In a letter, he told the local Lenni Lenape people, I desire to enjoy it with your love and consent, that we all may always live together as neighbors and friends. Penn arrived in Pennsylvania in 1682. He met with Tamanin and other Lenni Lenape leaders. He paid them for most of their land that King Charles II had given him, and he built a long-lasting, peaceful relationship with the Native Americans. So, as we can see, Penn and the Quakers had a different mindset than a lot of the other colonists who came to what they referred to as new land to be able to build the colonies. So here's a summary of everything we just read. Middle colonies were New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. People from many different places and backgrounds settled in the middle colonies. Some settlers came because of good land. Others came to freely practice their religion. And in the picture on this page, we see William Penn. He learned how to speak the language of the Lenni Lenape, and he treated the people fairly. Instead of creating wars. And what we saw in the building of the New England colonies with with the Native Americans is we saw lots of war. And not to say that that did not exist in the middle colonies, but when we had a settler like William Penn who had a different mindset of how he wanted the formation of his colony to go. Not to say that everybody in his colony abide by that same mindset of everyone to live freely and justly, but that was his intent when he formed Pennsylvania. So what I'd like for you to do is you can go back through this video at any time. You can re-listen to any of the content. If you have any questions about the content, feel free to ask me. There's no such thing as a silly question.